Here we are in the French Riviera. It's truly a shameful morning, a morning full of shame and disgrace and regret. But you got to find a way to get up and get with your community. Get out there and get doing. You can't believe what you see, you can't believe what you hear. Period. If you see or hear something on your phone, you can't know for sure that it's real. Now, how much more so does that apply to just believing people? Believing what people say, believing what people's opinions are, believing what they think. Hello. A big breakfast for a big man. I'm slowly seeing if I can get up to 300. I can eat this. No way I can eat all this. This is a social experiment. It's like Buddhist jackass or Buddhist punked. I'm like the Buddhist Ashton Kutcher. Think of it that way. You know what? I'm done. I'm done sitting in the screen. We're building a polygamist community here in Vietnam. community of true reasoning, a community that values the teachings of the Buddha. A community that practices mindfulness and detachment, regardless of the cost. No, you don't have to marry me to join our polygamist community here in Vietnam. Buddhist, the main thing is Buddhist. What everyone has thought about me, or the claims that people have made about me, I can assure you that I've changed. I've turned over a new leaf, and I'm no longer believing or following the idea of a solid self, like the self of this morning or the self of last night. I've not just let go of my past selves, but I've let go of the idea of self, the belief in self. So I'm no longer practicing a belief in self. I'm finding a flow state. I'm finding a gastrointestinal flow state. That's not correct. There's no belief in non-self either. There's no belief at all. No practice of belief. Not believing anything is to practice mindfulness and detachment. Not believing even the idea of not believing itself. The emptiness of emptiness itself. Everything that is already not a thing. We are in the French Riviera. So we're still waiting for Buddhist questions, meditation questions, non-duality questions from real spiritual practitioners and people who have realized entry into the path. So that's stream enterers and above, sotapannas and above. So if you are a sotapanna, if you are a stream enterer, please do share your question, share your insight. Sharing from our heart and asking questions from our heart. I'm sorry to say that my moderators are here and they are shutting down fake people and fake comments, rude comments and things like that. So just is the way that it is. We're here in the French Riviera and we're enjoying our morning time. The three main schools of Buddhism, differences. Keep poking at me, and I'll use my domain expansion. Slow it down, calm it down, let there be peace, and let's have people who really have sincere questions. Three different kinds of Buddhism. There's not really differences. What makes one school unique, the other school also has, just in a different form. So the fundamental principles and practices are from the Buddha, and all the schools are following them. They're just expressing them in different ways. So you could say for the Mahayana versus the Theravada, that the Theravada focuses on personal enlightenment, whereas the Mahayana focuses on collective enlightenment. However, in Theravada countries, there's probably a lot more communal teaching and sharing and kind of bodhisattva path work from serious monks than there are in Mahayana countries. Community geared work and community lifestyle based around Buddhism. And for the Vajrayana, you can talk about the shamanic elements, but the Mahayana has that in its forms, and so does the Theravada, in kind of esoteric Theravada. So we're forming a Buddhist polygamist community here in Vietnam. So we're switching to subscribers only mode. So just some of the less serious people, the trolls and the online wanderers, they have to subscribe if they want to leave a comment. If they don't subscribe, they can't leave a comment. So we want to have serious questions from serious people, basically. Asceticism is a form of extremism that oftentimes gets confused with detachment. So Buddhism is the middle way, meaning we don't cut our hands off or stand for 20 years, but finding the balance in renunciation with practical life. But in many cases, we practice asceticism in Buddhism as a way, or staying awake for long hours, to exercise our power of detachment. Bodh Gaya didn't present any enlightenment, but it gave the conditions and the environment for a deepening of my practice, and especially my relationship with the larger self, the collective conscious and the collective unconsciousness. I saw about the monks that got run over in Thailand, and I also saw about the Tibetan man that self-immolated because of China's new policies in Tibetan schools to only teach Mandarin. RKS Mutual, you don't. You refresh and restart and practice mindfulness and detachment now. You detach now. You practice meditation now. You cut the line of storytelling about yourself and your ego, and you go into a meditative way of being that's absent of all of these self ideas and ideals. So you don't do that. You can't do that. It's an effect of the actions that you take now. Why does conscious attach to this? It doesn't. That's just the notion of self, the view of self. Nothing attaches to anything. Just appearance, the appearance of attachment, basically. The appearance of attachment, or the appearance of someone, or the appearance of something, or the appearance of somewhere that is to be detached from. That's the teaching of the Buddha. It's to be detached from because it cannot be attached to. Moderators, can we ban this Bodhi Atman Brahman person that's spamming in the chat?
change the things I can, and the wisdom to know the difference.
The no thought state, yeah, this is Buddhism, this is Chan, this is Zen. So our capacity to acclimate ourselves to non-thought is our ability to have true perception and to develop discernment. Because it's one thing to get no thought, no story, no person, no place, no situation. It's another thing to allow that insight to penetrate into the deepest recesses of the mind so that our understanding is more and more complete, more and more subtle and direct, and true, and effective as well. You know, Buddhism is all about effectiveness, and in that way it's not religious or philosophical. And it's not if you get it or you don't. You might get it, but to what degree are you allowing that getting, or that freedom from it and freedom from getting to penetrate? So the more that you can realize or be the unconditioned, you can understand more and more all of these conditional phenomena, interactions and reactions. Basically, it's like we have inherent biases that localize the mind and form contractions in the body, even cancers in the body. And as we allow more and more no thought to be the basic state and to be the true state and true perception, we can reorient ourselves towards the path of practice, the community of practice, and the teacher of the practice, which is basically like awareness itself, or reality itself, or truth itself, the original nature. You know, nobody gets to go anywhere. Nobody gets to have a tomorrow. Nobody ever had a yesterday. There is no nobody. And there are no things either, so no nobody would also be a thing. But until you can release your sense of understanding or not understanding, we can't talk about thinglessness or the emptiness of things, because even though we get this, we kind of get this basic idea of no self, we don't actually have realization of that. And so we're constantly platforming and putting onto pedestal things that basically are just expressions of our ignorance and attachment. And this is why everybody's either trying to copy other people or manipulate other people. Because they don't get emptiness. They don't get thinglessness. They think that there are real things. They think that there are things that are truer than other things, experientially. And this is just not the case. It's like saying that the rain is worse than the sun, or whatever. It's just nonsense. And that's why these people are not able to form communities. They're not able to teach. Nobody's really interested in what they have to say unless they're actively copying other people or attempting to manipulate or trick people, because that's what people are used to, and they seek out what they're used to. You could say being manipulated by the algorithm or being manipulated by internal desires, but it's actually the manipulation of compulsion itself to grasp, to reject, and to attach. So that's what people look for. That's why you don't see really, there's not a lot of fame or a lot of money to be made in teaching about the truth or talking about the truth. Basically, the more enlightened you are, the less people are going to listen to you. Because people are looking for performance. They're not looking for truth. They're not looking for depth. They're not looking to be challenged. They're also not looking to be invited in any way. And you can rate your mindfulness by the degree of not rating, the degree of not judging. You know, so I try to offer that performative mindset because most of the people that follow me will not listen if I talk about Buddhism. They won't listen if I teach meditation. So in that way, I'm meeting the needs of the people that are around. You know, my devoted present moment followers, and communicating in a way that they can actually understand, which is pure insanity and nonsense. But there's a Dharma door in that pure insanity and nonsense, which is to be aware and to not attach. Because we see that what we're attaching to, that thought, that perception, that view, is actually not correct. It being not correct is not as good as realizing that it's empty, but if we can create a dynamic in a space where these people that otherwise would never say, oh wait, my view or my perception is not totally correct, they would never otherwise realize that. And so I think it reduces a lot of problems because it plants the seed of doubt in terms of people's own perceptive qualities, perceptive ability, especially when it comes to other selves. And this is where we create so much of the harm in the world, is all these prejudgments that we make based on what we think is our high level the high level thinking and feel and think so of our mind. But for most people, their feel and think so, especially when it comes to other selves or other beings, is basically non-existent. It's very, very shallow. That's why we lean so much onto aggression and to storytelling, baseless storytelling. We go on these fact-finding missions to create the ego, a sense of a real story about someone or something. And actually, for most of these people, if you put them through the experiences that I've been through, they would be totally insane. You know, if you put them through a meditation retreat, they would give up, or they'd go crazy, or they'd have a very intensely difficult time of what? Of just having to be with themselves, having to look at their own mind. Not any kind of training or somebody's telling you what to do or somebody's making you do anything, but just the nature of you having to sit and be with and look at your mind would drive you fucking insane. Most people that watch the YouTube channel and watch the live streams. And their unwillingness to admit that is this unfiltered and unregulated pride and ego that causes so much harm to people, to themselves and especially to others. You know, we have an epidemic of disingenuousness, basically. And then for the people that do value genuineness and try to be genuine themselves, they have so many biases and prejudgments that they're weaponizing their genuineness. And that's not correct. That's not right. You know, you can't determine if someone else is being genuine or not. You can just go deep, more and more deeply into your genuineness and your humanness. But in America, we don't believe in morality. We think that even like socialists and stuff, they think that money and profit and some kind of restructuring of materialism is where you're going to find morality. You're going to find morality in your heart. You know, so I just try to be as real as I can, and performative sometimes, and wild, but I don't mean any harm to anybody, and I certainly don't want to take advantage of anybody. And a lot of the time I don't want to deal with anybody, but I still show up and I try to share and create a space and create an energy where these kinds of conversations can happen, even if most people that come along here are not in a position to have these kinds of conversations. But you have to watch out by getting pulled into these hooks, because people are trying to get a reaction, people are trying to trigger you, people are trying to push out their agenda, they're trying to push out the compulsion of their thinking and their ideas, and you can't just be hooked on that. You know, you have to be able to see the emptiness in yourself, to see the emptiness in the thoughts and ideas and stories of the world. You know, and my practice isn't finished. I'm in my practice, so I have an experimental practice, and I like to share that with others. And then people take this into semantics and things like that, and you have to not be hooked, because every person is actually just ever new impermanent nature of unfathomable cause and effect. So you have to detach from the idea of people, of real people. You know, life is not a game. In the old times, I'd have a pistol on my hip, and you know, I'd be sitting at the old town bar, you know, drinking beers and playing poker. And if a man came by and said something disrespectful, said something smart, you're in a gunfight. Or if you're a gentleman, you say, all right, well, let's duel. And there's actually just something human in that level of violence that you know, does humanize us, makes us communicate in a realistic, practical, embodied way. And now so many people, they just communicate in this disembodied way where there's no practical, there's nothing on the table. It's like playing poker without money on the table. It's just a game, you know. That's not where the real fun is. The real fun is in risk and sacrifice, willing to be wrong, open to being wrong. You know, and that's the dynamic of this place, is that I set the context here, right? Just like if it was my business or if it was my home, I set the furniture there, I set the temperature there, I set the rules there. And if you are, you know, allowed to be in my home, you show respect, you show dignity, and you're careful. Otherwise, you get shot. You know, stand your ground laws in America. But people talking about, you know, Buddhism is fake and all this stuff, well, you know, do that on your own time. Don't bring that bullshit here, because we don't believe that here.
trying so desperately to be free by clinging on to power and control over your sisters and siblings and brothers, threatening the health of our very earth mother, exploiting her as you do her daughters, polluting and selling and controlling our waters. I see you, and you're breaking my heart, tearing families apart because of where they were born, leaving poor families torn, or by the color of their skin, locking up our children. I see you, you're as old as this country itself, compromising our emotional health. You were there in the slave trade, the very fabric from which this country was made. The bloody slave trade, the very fabric from which this country was made. Our hearts are infinite, your love has no limit. We can't fit no more inside of it. Our hearts are infinite, your love has no limit. We can't fit no more inside of it. Come on and balance it, balance it, balance it, yeah. You never learned the lessons from your Smith and Wessons and your fire hoses. Your fear exposes your vulnerabilities. You were there in manifest destiny, and you're still trying so desperately to be free, locked in the prison of your hatred and insanity. You were there in the boarding schools. You were the criminally cruel policies, stealing children from their families with the stroke of a pen. We always knew we would see you again, and you've never really been that well hidden, trying the same old tricks to no avail. Racist confusion will always fail. This is a sickness, an old disease. Let us help you with your suffering, please. This is a sickness, an old disease. Let us help you, let us help you. And let it free, let it free, let it flow inside of me. From the mountains and the trees, let it flow eternally. Let it free, let it free, flow inside of me. From the mountains and the trees, let it flow eternally. Balance it, balance it, balance it, yeah. Love is what I give, love is what I give. Room in my heart, room in my heart, room in my heart, room in my It don't stop and it don't quit. Room in my heart is infinite. It don't stop and it don't quit. Room in your heart is infinite. It's infinite. It's infinite.
Okay, do we have any questions? The suffering won't really stop until you become an arhat. But, until then, there is suffering. And it's not about being a perfect person or creating a perfect image for the world or for yourself. It's just a trick. It's to be aware and to not attach to the thoughts that you're aware of. That's the practice, and be still. That's where your mind is. Your mind is at stillness. Stephen, if we were playing Grand Theft Auto together, I would shoot you in your head. Is there hope for ultra conditioned beings? Not in this life, you know. It depends on their past lives and their blessings. We talked with someone who had an awakening experience when they were asleep, and they woke up and they were like a completely new person. They didn't understand it. Stoicism is good, but Buddhism is even better. Because Buddhism is a system of practice. It's a science, it's a technology of how to practice with the mind. It's very subtle and refined, specific. And that's why all these people that come around that kind of position themselves as an authority, or having like a, you know, like they're a veteran of the war of the mind, and they come in here and they say, it's this way, it's that way, etc. But actually, if they were to sit down and face their own mind for an hour or 2 hours, they'd probably go crazy. They wouldn't be able to do it. So there's no authority in that. So we have to attend meditation retreats. We have to practice seriously, you know, and until we're fully able to embrace our own mind all the time, there's no place for arrogance. There's no place for pride. Really be humble, really be open. The American problem is that we just don't believe in morality. We don't believe in being a good person. We don't practice that. And so there's always an excuse. There's always a righteous reason for us to throw away any kind of thought about being good, being kind, being generous, listening deeply, sharing deeply. There's always a reason why we don't have to do that. And that's not right. It's not good. Period. There's no discussion about it. Constantly having a righteous reason for us to believe and act out on thoughts that we know are not practical or realistic, to keep being greedy, keep wanting more and more, and also our frustration and our anger that's been very internalized and kind of covered up and closed down, right? So people don't even realize that they're acting from this place of tension or anger or frustration. But you can see it in their comments if you're perceptive enough. These people are suffering, they're angry, they're frustrated. They're looking for an outlet for their rage, for their hate, for their frustration about how much suffering is in their life. It's just humanism. Buddhism is just an advanced form of humanism, you know. And then instead of trying to understand what another person is saying, we're so caught up in this compulsion to consume and to stimulate ourselves that we feel like we have something else to do. But we actually don't have anything else to do except to continue distracting ourselves. And then the other thing that people love to do is to try and minimize, because they're more comfortable with other people and also themselves seeing this as an inferior teaching or an inferior expression of humanity, because they're creating this duality of, I can't let this guy be him because I have to keep being me. And if this guy's saying something that's true, then I would have to listen to him. But I don't want to do that. And look, until you're, really free from suffering, you've got people sharing hearts with you, and you got people sharing laughs at you. And you have to learn how to be aware of that and not attach to that. You're experiencing things that you like, and it's great. You can't attach to that, because you're also going to experience things that are very unpleasant and horrible. And then that attachment is going to apply to that as well. But the biggest attachment that we have is to our mental phenomena, right? Our mental thoughts and our mental ideas, these attachments to our perceptions and our views and our ideas. And our attachment to this belief in a self, that this is a real person and a real story. And they can fit into these sentences and these words and phrases that are constructed in the head, in the mind. And so people like being in a space like this because they feel that they can co-create the reality. Whereas like, if I'm just sitting here teaching meditation and the comments aren't on, 80% of the people aren't going to listen to what's going on. So they're going to cherry pick according to their ego what's real or what's relevant or what should be listened to, what should be responded to. But there's no broad view. And there's no importance or value given to a broad, comprehensive, contemplative view of what's going on. And that's why we're so easy to be manipulated by politicians, by the algorithm, by our own ego. Because we prioritize ourself and our selfishness and our greed and our anger and our nonsense thoughts over other people and their wants and their needs and the earth's wants and needs. Well, it's empty. It's impermanent. So maybe we can't understand emptiness, right? We can't. We cannot understand emptiness, but we can understand these marks of reality, right? So we can understand that any thought that we have or anything that we see, anything that we hear, anything that we experience is temporary. So how are you going to hold on to something that's temporary? Well, you don't have to answer that question because it's impossible. It's impossible to hold on to something that's going to disappear. In the same way, it's impossible to hold on to something that doesn't have a self-existence. It doesn't have a self-individual entity there to hold on to. It's like trying to hold on to a cloud. Well, there's no such thing as a cloud, separate from everything that makes a cloud, like the wind and the rain and all the different elements. So when you start to get into emptiness, you start to perceive the cloudlessness of clouds, right? Or the treelessness of trees, or the thoughtlessness of thoughts. Silence can be an answer, but there's also a certain, so when they talk about the enlightenment factors or how to really get the final success on the path, there's a quality of energy. So Axelite, maybe sometimes you see when I'm really energized and I'm like screaming and yelling. You've probably seen that kind of stuff. Like I'm super energized and super intense and like putting all this energy into kind of performing, but sometimes I get upset as well. I get frustrated. Have you seen that, Axelite? So imagine applying that kind of energy, that kind of intensity into the silence, from the silence and into the silence with the meditation. That's what actually has to be done. That's why people like Angelo Delulu or Alexis Non-Duality and a lot of these superficial spiritual teachers are basically not supporting people or guiding people on what needs to be done because they don't give avenues for that intensity. And that intensity as well is a whole body and mind communal environment, communal situation and experience over time. We shouldn't try to be the Buddha. We should try to be enlightened to what the Buddha taught and what the Buddha realized. Kind of, but we can't thingify it either, Axelite. Can't thingify it. And that's why there's a path, right? There's a step-by-step path. We have to purify our morality through generosity and mindfulness. And when you go deep, when you go far, Axelite, with your concentration and your virya, when you don't have that purified morality, shit gets fucking crazy. It gets really, really crazy. So it's like when the Buddha, the story of Siddhartha Gautama, when he was sitting under the Bodhi tree and he said, all right, well, I've got all these jhanas, I've got all these deep meditation states, I'm so pure, I'm so purified, I'm so powerful, I can experience all this bliss and pleasure. The mind had been very purified, right? But he said, when I'm not in those states, there's still suffering. So it's not finished, it's not complete. There's still things going on, there's still issues here. And so the Buddha said, okay, I'm going to sit under this tree and meditate in a broad sense, together with everything until I either die or become enlightened. And so then the Buddha was sitting there under that tree and gets assaulted by Mara, by the queen of illusion or the god of illusion. And, by fear and demons and all these kind of things appearing in the mind. And then also by lust and, beautiful women and riches and opportunities. And he just sat still. Right? So it's actually not something that you can think through if you want to go the full way. And as Westerners or people that are coming from a modern spiritual context, we tend to either want all or nothing, or we don't actually want to be on the path that seriously. So for those people that do want that all or nothing, there's a certain kind of realness to the path that one has to step into. And if you don't step into it that way, you're not going to have any kind of real development. And then we move from just the personal enlightenment to a collective enlightenment. And also that is a practical practice avenue, right, of considering others and using others' needs and others' positions and others' suffering to continue ourselves on the path. You get a very bleak picture of what this modern superficial spirituality or enlightenment path work presents. It just doesn't work that way. It's just not going to work that way. So I'm going to try and do some more oh yeah, it scares me. It's horrible. It's absolutely horrible. But if you can, when you can, just in that full spectrum of everything that we've talked about, you just sit. Stop seeking. Sit and stop seeking. Be the Buddha under the Bodhi tree for a little bit. And then over time, that can open up. Okay. Thank you, Drunken Donuts. But these complexes are very powerful. The complex of superiority, the complex of inferiority, and the complex of equality. Very powerful. So we kind of have to make a joke out of them in a practical sense. So I have a long way to go to be a better teacher and do a better job of supporting people. But I'm being patient with myself and hopeful. So I encourage when people come here, come and meditate. Come and try to meditate. We're not in an equal position, right? Because I'm broadcasting, I'm streaming, I'm sharing, teaching. So you're not in that position. So you don't have to create like this interpersonal dynamic. Sit there and meditate. See how it goes. Well, it's difficult. It's especially difficult being sucked back in because we are not living in a context of the Buddha, the Dhamma, and the Sangha. We're not living in a context of the spiritual path, right? So that's what's difficult. Because when you're in a context, like we have our community here, we're building our community here in Vietnam, you're not getting sucked back into the world of materialism, but you're getting sucked back into community concern with the Buddha, the Dhamma, and the Sangha. And once you become a stream enterer, or once you get over this this complex, it's basically like a virus. It's like a software malfunction in the mind of self-view, and you drop some of these fetters. You always come back to that. You always come back to that context. But the problem is that people are not very informed about path, and then they create their own ideas and belief systems and structures that the further they go, the more they go backwards, because they've never been told no, basically. No, you're not correct. So, but in this like modern culture of disingenuousness, it doesn't matter. It doesn't matter to be correct, because you're just playing a game. You're just self-stimulating. You know, it's like, how is it possible that this guy is the same guy that was in the bathtub yelling and screaming and doing this and that? Because there's no such thing as a solid self. Because I'm not a someone. I'm not a solid self. Sure, join a meditation retreat, neat. Buddhist text I recommend, it's going to be less about reading. You're not going to get a lot of benefit by reading. Now, there's a story of a guy who has a YouTube channel where he was very close with his dad, and he, basically his dad got like very serious cancer out of the blue. And for him, that was like a holy messenger event. Like, it struck him very strongly, this reality of death, and his ego couldn't take it. And so he started searching and seeking, and came across like very good Buddhist texts, and which of course there's so many, and he was able to get the stream entry, or get the insight, get the attainment. And maybe that's something that we will get to see for ourselves, but it's not gonna just be because we're reading a book, right? So there would be Buddhist texts that I could recommend in you being a part of this practice energy or this practice community, right? But just in general, you asking like Buddhist texts to recommend, you might as well be talking to an AI. You see what I'm saying? So there's something special that happens when we develop this kind of seemingly interpersonal relationship or interenergetic relationship with the Sangha, with the community of path work, and the community of the Buddha, Dhamma, and Sangha as well. So it's all about the path. It's all about becoming more enlightened and becoming more free of self, more free from self. This is something that Master Yonghua was talking about. He says, look, if you're going out there and advertising, or you're going out there and talking about, you have a connection with these people and that's why they're following you and your students are practicing with you. He said, all that's garbage. If you really know the Dharma, if you really have that piece of the pie, people will find you and people will want it. And so that's my view about how I use this YouTube channel and how I use this persona and like what I do in my life. It's not about money or status or fame or praise or blame right now. It's a matter of something that is not going to lose its value. It's just how deeply I continue to practice with that. And it has nothing to do with like my career on YouTube or making money on YouTube or whatever. So I wouldn't mind if this YouTube channel didn't exist anymore. It wouldn't be a problem, because I don't have to help people. I don't have to do these live streams. We as a Sangha, don't have to help people. It's not like a rule or something. And yeah, it does feel good when people respect us, when people care about us, when people support us. But that's not a reason to become like ego-mongering devils or something like that. You feel good because people respect you. Well, that's human. And unless somebody is an arahat, unless somebody's fully enlightened, yeah, we're gonna feel good when good things happen, until we're free from good and bad. We're free from right and wrong. We're free from left and right. We're free from directionality and locality. We're free from being controlled by how things seem. I would consider myself on the path of nirvana. Yeah, I don't usually talk about it that way, but we may talk about it that way more in the near future, as well as critiquing some of the people like Angelo Delulu and Alexis Non-Duality. You know, because these people are really deeply misleading seekers. Really. It's okay, Isaac. I know that you're a troll, so don't worry about it. If you have an ego problem, fuck off. I got interested in Buddhism because I was suffering so much. Period. And I needed to find a way to get out of that suffering and get out of that software of suffering that was imbued into me by my upbringing. Otherwise, I'd be anxious, I'd be depressed, I'd be schizophrenic, I'd be all these kinds of things. You know, I'd be messed up if I didn't find the path. Yeah, weed is very bad. Weed is not good at all. Weed is worse than alcohol for the mind. Anybody who's on the spiritual path, and oftentimes it's people with mental health issues that are on the spiritual path, weed is the absolute last thing that you should be taking. And you can see that because it's like a mental, spiritual addiction to weed. So no, weed cannot be used as a tool in spirituality or in the path. So like a cigarette or something, it's like a mental, physical addiction, right? But with the weed, it's basically only a mental, mental, spiritual addiction. You know, and what do we do about those people that show up and, you know, kind of create energy or dynamics that we don't like? We practice compassion. Non-differentiated compassion. And that releases the sense of self that we're in conflict with. Yeah, definitely. It's not good to smoke, it's not good to drink, not good to eat a bunch of sugar, but it's not good to have a body either. You don't see anybody talking about getting rid of the addiction to the body. So spiritual addiction is just an addiction to the body. And we kind of expect that somebody's trying to prove something to us. I'm not trying to prove anything to anybody here, especially not Chikaniki Taos. And you can't prove anything. How do you prove tomorrow? How do you prove yesterday? I have proof of yesterday. No, you don't. You're just holding something in your hand. How is this proof of yesterday? What is addicted to the body? Well, that's the thing. The body doesn't really exist. So, nothing, right? And that's why we go into spiritual community, Axelite, because when we're isolated like that, it's like those other people are you. Sure, definitely, Travis. What really exists? Nothing actually exists. Nothing only exists on the basis of everything. right? Like on the foundation of everything, nothing exists. On the foundation of nothing, everything exists. It's not intellectual. The intellectuality is not relevant in Buddhism. Buddhism is one of the most hardcore religions or practices or spiritual communities in the world, and has been for 2,500 years. It's about meditation, it's about practice, it's about taking refuge, it's about looking at your own mind. And a lot of different practices that can go together at that. But what you firstly need to start with is you need to start working with your generosity, your relationship with generosity, or your relationship with uncoupling the self in reference to others, right? Uncoupling the self, uncoupling the localized body and mind and its attachments and its possessions, etc., in relationship to others. You're gonna have to do that physically before you do it mentally, right? Can be volunteering, can be donating, can be compassionate listening, but you know, you're gonna need community to do that. You're gonna need guidance. And you don't need to ask, you need to apply that. You need to apply generosity more deeply, and you need to apply mindfulness more deeply, which is just aware of what's happening without thinking about it. Without telling a story about it. So that has nothing to do with your intellectual findings, because you haven't practiced meditation enough. You haven't practiced meditation enough for your intellect to be based on true reasoning. You understand? You're still operating from this sense of true localization, that there's actually a position here, there's a position over there, mentally or physically. There's not. There's no position in space. Space is positionless, right? And the nature of the mind is often equated with the nature of space. So you're taking a position, and that is false reasoning. There's not actually a position to speak from, to see from, to hear from, to think from, and that's why your thinking is fundamentally flawed. So the guys over at Hillside Hermitage, he says you can get the stream entry, you can get the enlightenment through following the path, generosity, doing good deeds, meditation, listening to Dharma talks, you know, practicing very seriously, renouncing very seriously, or you can get it through true reasoning. The key can be found in true reasoning, which is like the true reasoning of there seems to be separate things, but separation itself is just a thing that's made up. It's just, separation is just an idea, like the idea that there aren't separate things, etc. So apparently that's it. Apparently that's correct, but I don't know much about that. And we'll see. I believe that Axelite. I mean, I have a tough time believing anybody with a lot of the people that I deal with. And that's a part of my process as well, because I don't want to fall into this egoic trap of being a spiritual teacher, thinking I'm enlightened and stuff like that. But yeah, that should work. You know, generosity should work. Self-sacrifice should work, especially if it's in relationship to someone who's on the path, you know, generosity to an Arya Sangha member. Now, is that true or not true? I have no idea. I believe that, Travis, as much as I believe that a thought can grasp something or a thought can hold something. And it's a total reworking of our framework, which is what a lot of people don't understand. It's like your process of waking up this morning and having a tough time, right? And so, well, then you're not enlightened and you're not on the path and all this kind of stuff, right? Well, this is one of the fetters. No, it's not a fetter. It's which one is it? The one that is sloth and torpor. The 10 fetters, sloth and torpor. Anyways, enlightenment is spontaneous. And the framework or the pathway of Sotapanna, Sakyagami, Anagami, Arahat, etc. is like curing mental viruses or curing software issues in the process of this body and mind. So then you can get in, unless you're an Arahat, you can feel fear, you can feel lust, but it's reduced. Because this self-idea that you're constantly under the banner of or under the weight of is now seen through. Clearly, there's not a real story here to be told about anything. When you look around, maybe you tell a story about somebody, but you don't have to. And that's the freedom of it, right? You don't have to tell a story about yourself. You don't have to identify with a story of anything. You refresh, restart, this renewal process taking place. And then that self or that ego, it dies. Right? So that's when your dreams really change and things like that. The context of death is meditation. So viewing impermanence and enduring the unpleasantness of the body and the mind and the experience. And then also just practically being around death, you know. Yeah, Cody, that's just nonsense. It's totally incorrect. Thank you, Abracadabra. I'll give you a blessing chant, my friend. Sapitio vivachantu saparoko vinasatu mape pawadana silicha ayuano sukham bharam. Sadhu, sadhu, sadhu. It's a necessary evil, Axelite, you know, so you're either worshiping the finger pointing at the moon, or you're worshiping the finger on your dick, or the finger in the shawarma, you know, covered in oil. So we got to be practical. That's why, you know, we can be quite flexible about Buddhism and Sangha and telling people to shut their fucking mouths because they're totally wrong. Because we're not taking refuge in that finger, we're taking refuge in the finger pointing at the moon. So it's a practical evil. It's a necessary evil for our path work. If you really want to go far. If you really want to go far, you have to give up your life. You have to lose yourself. You have to die. I couldn't do it. I went up there and I saw King Yama and I fucking pissed my pants and ran away. You know, the king of death, and fucking ran away, man. Because it's scary as all hell. You know, I would, shit, if I could snap my fingers and go back and be an Arahat, people are always asking me, you miss being a monk? No, I wish I would have became a fucking Arahat at the Mahakumbh festival. But it didn't work out that way. And as a Buddhist, you know, worshiping the finger pointing at the moon, we know about that stuff, we believe in that stuff. You know, it's like Hung, my wife and my partner, she knows about that stuff. Like if you practice very seriously and you flip that switch, this Dr. Rob ain't gonna be here anymore. Because my wife, you know, making me eat food, and I wouldn't be interested in any of that anymore. That shit's real, man. Now, is it likely to happen to me or to most people? Probably not in this lifetime. But we can still keep our fingers crossed, and that's the finger that we point at the moon. Sometimes it's behind our back, sometimes it's at a gun, and sometimes it's really pointing at the moon, you know, with heart, with love, with hope, you know, with this compassionate aspiration, this bodhicitta, you know, this aspiration to enlighten, to become enlightened. Yeah. And so I believe a lot in the rule of opposites. right? So if that's true, then the inverse of it must also be true, because it's on the same principles. Because duality, or the construct of suffering and nibbana, is dissolved. So if I'm going wild, I can, I can also say that. A wild person can say that as well, and that's true. I think that I am like the moon reflecting off water. If you look at me and you see a bad man, you see yourself. I saw death when you started becoming a donor, Rai Brown. The red glasses are really nice. It gives you some separation. These will help. This will help people for sure. I'm not, it's maybe not that skillful to go too much into that stuff. It's a little bit sensitive. But it's nice to see through red lenses, you know. That's right, Asmiel Prime. They help me in the same way that my mustache helps me, Tana Geberson. Well, that's what you have to do, Travis. That's what you have to practice in meditation. That's specifically what you have to practice to improve the quality of your life, internally and externally, and to heal material and mental illness. But at the beginning, because we don't have a relationship with generosity, and we don't have a relationship with morale, we don't believe in it. That's the thing with Americans. They don't believe in morality. It's okay, morality is an idea waiting for an excuse to be immoral. And when we live like that, we don't have access to peacefulness. And so when we can actually be peaceful, and then we can resist that hardship or that movement, that complicatedness, that storytelling, that compulsiveness, that's where the healing happens. Yeah. Well, you're lucky that you came back down, Axelite, and I am too. The world is not a place for deep spiritual experiences. It's just schizophrenia, the greater conversation, I'm sorry to say. Okay. Take care, Asmiel. Meditate well. Maybe you'll be an arhat soon. There's nothing over there. That's my elaboration. There's nothing over there. And if there was something over there, it's impossible for you to know what's over there. It's scientifically impossible. So that's why it's just, what you could call schizophrenia or delusions. But it applies to everything. And because you've pushed your mind so far in rejecting norms, that's the only way I could say it. But rejecting norms is the same as attaching to extremes. like this extreme that you're talking about, of a big complicated thought about a person that you know nothing about, that you have nothing to do with, and representing a situation that you have no capacity to digest or understand, that has no real direct impact practically, realistically in your day-to-day life and your day-to-day responsibilities. So it's just a disaster. So I say, if you're holding up a hand like that, cut off your fingers and slap yourself in the face with your palm, with your open palm, that doesn't have all these extra things spouting out of it, all these weeds, all these poisonous things, that thoughts and beliefs and stories. It's just not needed. It's just not useful. I'm not hungover from last night because I didn't drink very much.
Chỉ có dùng ly đá thôi kìa.
Yeah? No? Nothing. Yeah, I have experienced that, Travis. Don't worry about what Buddhism says. Worry about what you says and don't attach to that. You know, so we're going to work to create this homestay, meditation center here in Vietnam, and then hopefully in the next couple years or sooner, Myanmar will open up and stabilize, and then we can make another one in Myanmar. And any other opportunities that might open up, we'll be ready to make use of them. We just talked to the lawyer today, Travis, so once we get back to Ho Chi Minh City, we'll have a meeting with the lawyer about what we need to do and what that process is going to look like, especially for Shelly, because Shelly's needs to find a way to get a visa, long-term visa. Yeah. So the foundation of the mind is basically Buddha. Already complete, already fixed, already resolved, right? Just like the foundation of space is already spacious and pure of things. So the work of enlightenment is not a self-work, but rather a reworking or an unworking of self specifically that allows our thoughts to be congruent and this true reasoning to be emanating from this unbounded, unmanifest mind. So in that way, there's not a difference between an enlightened person and a normal person in terms of the Buddha mind, in terms of space, right? So we're all equally incorrect and equally correct, and that's why the world is possible to come up with such deep, special advancements, and also to be so unskillful, you know, to literally destroy the planet Earth because of our unskillfulness. And destroy opportunities to practice as well. All right, we're gonna unban everybody. Don't worry about it. Everybody's getting unbanned very soon. I have not. But we're doing a lot of exercise walking around here. We're going to visit a place around here, very nice. Okay, we go? Okay. Goodbye, everybody. Namo Amaratasu. Namo Amaratasu. Namo Amaratasu.